All right. Welcome, everyone. We are here for a episode today on the private podcast. And this is the Attracting Profit private podcast for emotionally uncomfortable. You may or may not know that I am Heather Chauvet. And this series that I'm doing is all about mastering the art of doing less better. And today I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Jordin Wiggins. And we're really talking about how our intimate relationship with pleasure plays a role in our business success. So I'm going to read you Dr. Jordin's bio, let you know about her book, and then I'm going to give you my own personal commentary. You're going to hear from me in between this episode as well, where I talk about the importance of certain things. So grab a pen and a paper. And before you do anything, I want you to take a screenshot of the episode that you're listening to right now for your chance to win some prizes that I will be gifting out to people who tag us on Instagram. So you're going to take a screenshot of this episode. You're going to put it in your stories and you're going to tag me at Heather Chauvet, CHAUVIN. That's how you spell my last name. And you can also tag Dr. Jordin if you're listening to this episode. So her Instagram is Dr. DRJORDIN Wiggins, WIGGINS. And you're going to find her there. So Dr. Jordin is a naturopathic doctor and feminine burnout and intimacy coach. She teaches CEOs and successful women how to be a badass in the bedroom and the relationships in our business. She is the CEO of the Pleasure Collective, which is a coaching community for women reclaiming their pleasure, as well as the author of her book, The Pink Canary, an investigation into the hidden secrets to optimize women's health, and the host of the podcast, the Pleasure Principles podcast. And she dedicates her time to exploring and understanding pleasure, health, and sex into today's society. She is a women's health expert and retired owner of a 7-figure women's health clinic. So we're going to dive in. And what I love about Dr. Jordin is the science behind it. So I think you're going to walk away with a lot, because we tell ourselves we don't have time to feel good and to feel alive. And this is living proof that not only is it screwing up your hormones, not only is it affecting the orgasms you're having in the bedroom, it's affecting the profit that you are attracting in your business. So let's dive in. Hello, friend, and Dr. Jordin.
Hello.
How are you?
Talking to you.
I know, this is so fun. So this series that I'm doing, especially around business, is all about attracting, I call it attracting profit, but profit to me is time, money, and energy. And I think you and I are very aligned. We always talk about how we're like teaching the same thing, but not teaching the same thing, and in very different ways, like very different languages. Like sometimes I'm watching your stuff and I'm like, ooh, I got to lean into that. Like I can feel the discomfort in my body. So let's talk about that. How do we do less better by adding more pleasure to our lives?
Okay.
And how do you define pleasure?
And the resistance that your body screams when dealing with my work. I hear it all the time. It's like people need to, engage with it, listen to my podcast, like dip the toe in. And because when we are high functioning, overachieving, busy, people pleasing, like doers, that means the pleasure centers in our brain are turned off, or they're not as active. And this, I'm not making this up. Like there's studies, there's MRIs. I wrote the details in my book, The Pink Canary, if you want the details. But for what you need to know, pleasure centers in your brain are turned off when you're on all the time. So difficulty relaxing and enjoying, difficulty receiving pleasure, help, compliments, difficulty having amazing orgasms. And if there is a correlation that I can make, it is orgasms to profit. Are you uncomfortable yet?
No, I'm loving this.
So
I will tell you 10 years ago, I would have been very uncomfortable. Like when I started reading like Mama Gina's School of Womanly Art, like that was my first coach, which was a quote unquote business coach. It was like, here, read this book. So
Mama Gina was one of my very early teachers. Yeah. I did School of Womanly Arts.
Yeah. I feel like maybe I'm 10% uncomfortable and not. Yeah. I'm just curious, but I would have been before been like, oh God.
Yeah. So, she said orgasm.
Let's dive deeper.
Okay. So just pleasure to wrap it up. When we are wrap it up, I'm going to make a ton of innuendo that I don't even intend to do and laugh at myself. When our pleasure centers are turned off or down, we have that visceral response because our brain is in go mode, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? We're not in that like relaxed, receive. We want to know what's the next task, what's the next thing I want to cross off my to-do list, which we think we're being very efficient and profitable, but and our body is screaming. That resistance is normal when you're in that nervous system state, because our body's like thinking, how do I survive? What's the next step, next thing to be done? It's not thinking about resting and feeling good. Our touch doesn't feel as good. Orgasms aren't as, long or feel as pleasurable when our pleasure centers are turned off. So I like to explain it. We've termed me like the CEO of pleasure for the women that I work with. And I talk about the return on pleasure or the return on sex. So our body is screaming at us, don't do this. Or, even when you don't really want to go to the gym or exercise, but if you do, you'll feel good. Or you don't really want to have sex, but once you get going, it will feel good. That's that whole, our pleasure centers are off. But if we can start living life where they're on and we're abundant and energetic and our mood is better and our self-confidence is better and everything feels good, like that's the science part. So we just have to flip our brain, our thinking, our focus to pleasure, but it feels scary. It feels like there's resistance because your nervous system and your hormones and your stress response is telling you, don't do that. Yeah. That's frivolous.
I want you to listen to what Dr. Jordin just said about our pleasure centers being off. So this is the essence of being emotionally uncomfortable, right? When I'm teaching people how to reverse engineer how they want to feel. And then she talks about the living aspect. So remember this, right? We have pleasure centers in our brain. And she also referenced how we don't want to go to the gym, but then we go to the gym and we feel better. There's a difference between pushing yourself to a state of burnout, but then also intuitively listening to your body and knowing, okay, cool. I actually don't normally feel safe with my pleasure centers on. So if I want to become a different person, then it is my responsibility to lean into this discomfort. So in Dr. Jordin's case, I don't want to have sex. It's, there might be a lot of trauma near it because your pleasure centers and therefore your pleasure centers have been turned off. But that's not just happening in the bedroom. That's happening in all areas of your life as well. So I really want you to grab on to that quick takeaway that she said, which is when your pleasure centers are off, you're not going to actually want to feel good. You're not going to want to do the thing to feel good, but do it anyways, or try something to kind of encourage those pleasure centers to turn on. So I can see the connection and the correlation because I've done a lot of, I'm using air quotes, work on myself, air quotes, work on myself. I've been in this space for like a decade. Still more work to do, right? So two things come up is normalizing. I would love for you, your perspective of normalizing that it's the shame around like, oh, my body is in a state of fight or flight. Even if you're like, I practice this stuff, I preach this stuff. Like I'm assuming you as a teacher also go through seasons of fight or flight or survival. Like you're not just like, oh yeah, I'm open to receiving all the time. So I want to talk about that.
Yes, thank you.
The other thing I want to talk about is, oh God, it just completely left my brain. But also, oh yeah, a little bit about like your story. We don't have to get in the whole story because I'm going to talk a little bit about you at the beginning and the intro and commentary. But like, you're a doctor, so talk about why you're doing this work and why you like stopped going to like someone coming to you and saying, my hormones are out of balance, because that's such a trendy term. And then people are like, yeah, I'll do the testing with you. You can quote unquote take the supplements, but that's really not going to solve your problem. So I love how you marry like actual science with like, it's not about the testing and the supplements all the time. Like if you fully want to become healthy and thrive.
That is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because my goal, so, in a nutshell, my story, raised as a high functioning people pleaser, history of sexual abuse from one of my friend's fathers growing up, and had a lot of my own intimacy, pain with sex, things that I had to work through. Depression, anxiety made worse by hormonal contraceptives. And that's what led me into naturopathic medicine. My goal in life was to have a women's health clinic and help women balance their hormones and their stress response and all of those things. And I heard over and over and over again, so about 2,000 women, they're like, my energy's better, I'm losing the weight, my periods aren't as heavy or as painful, and something's missing. And I'm still not happy. And like, so there was this, and I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, I thought I could fix everything by balancing hormones and checking, like doing the most, elite testing that you can do in the world. And that was a piece of the puzzle. It is an important piece, because if we are not healthy on the cellular level, then we have big problems. But I realized that there was this massive lack of fulfillment. And the way that I would describe it medically is anhedonia. So the ability to feel pleasure, receive pleasure. It's a diagnostic criteria of depression. But I just found that was what was permeating. And that wasn't something that I could fix with a supplement or a hormone prescription. So that's what led me into this work that I do today, which is marrying both.
Okay. Did you hear it? Did you hear that? Ladies, please, please pay attention. I beg you, as someone who was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer 10 years ago, went through the medical system, and then went through the functional medical system, functional testing and all the things. It wasn't until I dove into coaching and I left my job as a social worker and a therapist to dive into coaching. I did not understand back then that aligning myself and my daily actions and habits with things that allowed me to feel good, which I started doing before I met Dr. Jordin, I didn't know that was actually going to change my brain. I didn't know that back then, and that was going to improve my health. So I want you to hear that when she's talking about this. It is so important for you to understand that the neglect of your own fulfillment, that you tell yourself this story, is not only affecting your physical health, it is affecting all aspects of your life, including, because we're gearing this conversation towards attracting more profit in your business, including attracting more profit.
And I struggle doing this work daily. And I think I just did this live event last week, and I really have to spell out to people, like, I'm a sexual abuse survivor. I am a domestic violence survivor. I am currently going through a crazy legal situation. I was being harassed online, separating from my partner, like, having to charge somebody with criminally harassing you. But I'm showing up like online and doing the work, but it doesn't mean that I am not in fight or flight. So back, if we rewind into April, when all of this stuff was really challenging, like, I was waking up at 2, 3 in the morning. It's like soaked in sweat. I had anxiety that I felt like I was choking. So just because I do this work, I don't want people to think that I'm on this like pleasure cloud and having 5-minute orgasms every single day, because that's not realistic. And I don't even think that that's the goal. I think the goal is to feel more, to be present with high sensation. And we're talking about more pleasure a lot, but it also means that we have to feel more pain too, because it's like a dial that's connected. So if we turn up feeling, we are turning up feeling. And so many people, I think our culture, very masculine, very productivity oriented. Like, so we're either like numb, wine, sugar, overworking, planning vacations or home renos, like to distract from feeling. So yeah, I don't want to make it sound like this, because for some reason, people just assume that I'm like, I don't know, in a sex commune or something, like just living my pleasurable life all day, every day, when in fact, it's a practice for me too. It's work that I have to do daily.
All right. I had to stop here for a second, because when I used to hear this, that your body is talking to you or your symptoms, I want to break this down to what this actually is. So inside my mastery coaching program, we talk a lot about this. I tell people emotional intelligence is my thing. If you can master your emotions, you can change your world, you can change your life, you can definitely attract more profit in your life. But people don't actually understand, what do you mean my body is talking to me? Every symptom that you have is your physical body saying something is out of alignment. But culturally, we have taught ourselves that symptoms are just the way that we are. We live in a very sick, dysregulated, misaligned culture in Western society. And I know not everyone listening is in the Western Hemisphere. So when I say your emotions are talking to you, because I talk about this all of the time in my program, is, let's say, fear, for example. I think everyone can identify with fear or guilt. Sometimes people can identify with shame, but they don't necessarily know it's shame. So let's talk about fear. So you can feel the fear coming up in your body, right? So then you start living from that place. So then you don't take the action. You start to yell, you start to scream, you miss opportunities. You don't say yes to things. And then you stay in your comfort zone. So what I do, these are 2 questions. I want you to have pen and paper. I want you to write it down. So when I'm afraid, I just close my eyes, because I can identify self-awareness, identify that it's fear. But fear is not on my vision board. Fear is not aligned with my future vision of myself. I'm not I'm waking up terrified, having panic attacks. That is not what my vision is, right? And I assume it's not yours either. You want to wake up alive, feeling alive and aligned. You want to be doing wildly profitable work in the world. Okay. So I close my eyes when I can tell that I'm in a state of fear or my thoughts are racing. Or when I'm like, why am I not getting the results that I wanted? So I close my eyes. I put my hand on my heart and I say, fear, why are you here? So I try to identify where the fear is. I might feel it in my chest. I might feel it in my throat, might feel it in my head, my pinky toe. It doesn't matter. I bring my energy and attention to that part in my body. Okay. And it's like, so let's pretend it's the pinky toe. That's awkward and weird. And that's whatever. That's just me. So I'm bringing my energy and attention to the pinky toe, and I can feel the fear in the pinky toe. So I'm like, fear, why are you here? So write that down. That's question number one. Fear, why are you here? And it's going to tell you, your intuition is going to be like, to keep you safe. Most likely that's what it's going to say. Okay. So therefore, the opportunity in front of you is outside your comfort zone. The second question you're going to say is, fear, what do you need from me to feel safe to leave my body? And most of the time when I'm doing this with people, they don't actually, like, sometimes you don't get a result, but it's just paying attention to the fear. And so you're just like focusing your energy and attention on the fear. And then all of a sudden it just kind of goes away and diminishes. And you're like, oh, that's interesting. I just had to pay attention to it instead of avoiding my fear. Okay. And then there's like a next level thing that I do with the clients inside of our mastery and our mastery business programs. And it's about, what do you want to bring into your body? So you're like, well, I want to bring in abundance and confidence and all the thing. And so you have all these things inside of you. And it's really about listening to our bodies and allowing, like, just creating space. And this can be 3 minutes. You're going to change the energy. You're going to have boundaries with the emotions that you don't want to feel, right? Like fear, overwhelm, all the things. And then you're going to allow to create more energetic capacity for what you do want. So let's keep going with the interview. It's like working out. Like, you have to put in the reps. You have to show up. You don't always have to be doing the most intense workout, but you cannot avoid it, in the sense of like, just like, I don't even want to call it procrastination, avoidance, hiding. So many things that I would like to say, but I have never been a science-minded person. Like, that's just not my go-to. I'm always like a feeler. And when I was younger, like, definitely the survival state was the knowing all the things, right? Like, we don't need to get into patriarchy and all that, but like everything. And then going into a high functioner because kicked into motherhood and was like, oh shit, I don't want to fail. So I'm just going to over nurture, over mother. And then cancer. So, but then I'm like, my anxiety's gone or diminished, or my depression is gone. Like, this is weird, right? Like, I've been taught that it runs in the family. I've been taught that this is what adulthood is. And I love the realistic perspective, because I do find in the wellness space, it's so toxic of like, just rest all the time. And I'm in a season of my life where like, is actually not life enhancing for me, because I know how to do it. But what I heard you say is, when you're in seasons of like huge transition in your life, or things are coming up, your body is reacting and you're saying, okay, here's a symptom. My body is talking to me. And then you act accordingly. You are not being like, okay, I'm going to do this all or nothing, where I'm in a season of complete surrender. But sometimes I feel like it's a state of avoidance as well. Like, I have a friend who I'm like, every conversation I have with her is like, what is your little self saying, or whatever? She's always running. And I'm like, what are you running away from? Like, you say you want this, but you're just, oh, I'm relaxing. Oh, my nervous system, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, bullshit. So I want you to talk a little bit about like the masculine and the feminine, and why we can't just be fully in the surrender, and why, like, we got children to feed, bills to pay as well. So like, how do you balance that?
Yeah. And that is the key for me, is it's, how can we flow back and forth, right? Between those different nervous system states, between like using pleasure and prioritizing pleasure as a form of resilience, as a form to build up your health mentally, physically, spiritually. But we need both. It's never all or nothing. And I feel like there is always that pendulum swing. And you see femininity has been very popular on social, and it's honestly turned off a lot of my clients in the way that it is spoken about online, because it is like avoidance or just, or even the manifesting some of it, where it's very much like, do nothing and it will all come. And it's like, okay, well, we need some aligned action. Like it's the balance, the yin and the yang. And I learned, like, becoming a naturopathic doctor, you study Chinese medicine. And I realized, like, wow, I am all yang. I am all masculine. And those were the qualities that were revered to get my grades in school and as an athlete and succeed. But I was missing the other side of the equation. And it's all about harmony. It's about, like, how do these things work and fit together? So we're never all resting. Mm-hmm. And we're never all doing, because both will create pathology.
All right. So I just think Dr. Jordin is amazing. And I love when I collaborate with women experts who can balance both, because people say to me, think about this. Everyone comes to me and they're like, I want balance. I want balance. I want to feel fulfilled. I want to feel all the things. But that's exactly what she's talking about here, which is balancing the energies of the masculine and the feminine, the yin and the yang. And I'm going to tell you a quick, funny story. So back in the day when I started getting into personal development, I started reading The Secret, the Law of Attraction, manifesting, all the things. There was always a part of me that was like, there's something here that's off, right? I was hanging out with the energy healers. I was hanging out a lot in the meditation and the wellness community, yoga community. And I noticed that a lot of these people had an extreme financial poverty mindset because of their belief systems, the core belief system of like just giving everything away. But I was like, there's no giving and receiving. You're just give. And to be honest, I knew some of these people behind the scenes were literally starving and on government assistance and not able to pay their bills, but they wouldn't do the emotionally uncomfortable, quote unquote, masculine work, the aligned action to attract more financial abundance in their life. So if that is you, just know that that's okay. But when I did start, I was like, nobody talked about action. They just talked about feelings and vibration and all the things. And I'm like, there has to be a balance here. And so there is a balance, but it's part intuition, part strategy, part pivoting, all the things. And the last part that I wanted to say about that is, if something is not aligned for you, it's time to find a new strategy or path. You do not need to suffer here, but sometimes we need to feel our feelings and push through the pain a little bit. And then we need to rest and recover. And I don't know where I heard this from, but I remember someone saying, if you want to be an athlete or if you want to be a high performer or wildly successful, whatever your energy output is, you need to double your recovery. And the way that I see that as well is that yin and yang, right? If you're working a whole day, like 10 hours for a day, and you feel burnt out by the end of the day, you almost need to take 2 days off to recharge for that 1 day of output. So don't think of this as the 9 to 5, 40-hour work week. I want you to think of this as energetic flow and energy output and rest and recovery so that you can attract more profit in your life, time, money, and energy.
Pathology, energetic dysfunction, cellular dysfunction, when we're talking from the Chinese medicine perspective. So because of our culture, I think that the conversation around the feminine and adding more feminine is so important, because we need to be able to rest. We need to be able to receive. We need to be able to celebrate. we need those more feminine characteristics to round out our wellness. But it's not like, so then we just talk about that and disown the masculine, because that will cause problems too. So it's about, I have a client, for example, extremely burnt out, digestive issues out of nowhere, keeps getting sick, like will fly to a speaking event and get crushed with an illness when she gets home. So very burnt out, immune system dysfunction. She's not digesting, so she's nutrient deficient. So we're in this like cycle, and she's coming into a season in the fall where she has a ton of work travel. So she's like, are you going to tell me that I can't go? And I'm like, no, we're going to figure this out and get you resilient enough and like balance things so that you can go and you don't get sick and you can show up.
But that's what our culture does. And I had this conversation with you because I was like, I need support, because it was actually ironically in April when I had some crazy gut shit happening. And I'm like, are you going to tell me that I just need to rest? Because if you do, we're not friends anymore. We're not friends anymore, because that is what every other functional medicine practitioner has said. You can't do this. You can't do this. You can't do this. And I was like, I'm fine with that for a season, but I still you're actually taking away from my joy bucket now. And you're also taking away from my financial bucket. So the duality of both, this and also be mindful. Like, there's so many to unpack there. So go ahead.
I have one example. It's kind of science, so maybe it will not be exciting for you, but it's exciting for me. So we know they did studies on rats. I can't remember which university it was. And it was about cholesterol. And there was this certain group of rats that were fed a very poor diet, but their cholesterol stayed fine. And they couldn't figure out why, because it didn't make sense. Like, they were given the diet that was supposed to give them high cholesterol. And they realized that the technician in charge of that specific group of rats would play with them and pet them and snuggle them before they fed them the diet. So to me, that's like a perfect example of pleasure, right? So it's not about cut out the wine, cut out all these foods. And yes, maybe it's indicated for a season, because if you are really unwell and I need to get you better fast because you have all this travel coming up, yeah, okay, we might need to make some drastic changes depending on the outcome that you want. But it's always for being healthy and then having joy and having pleasure. So if the glass of wine, and like you put it in the good glass and it's a bottle you've been saving forever, and like it feels like the right night to have it, to deprive yourself of that is causing a stress response. That is causing damage on the cellular level. So yeah, it's more complicated than just like cut out gluten and dairy and rest and like, yes. Actually, not going to work long term.
100%. And like, that's why I love you to pieces. And that's why I trust you. And that's why you're so like, one, definitely blazing your own path. And yeah, it's alignment. So 2 questions I want to ask you, because I know we're running out of time. Obviously, you have a lot of content. You have a book. We're going to let people know where they can find you if they want to learn more about you, work with you, how to contact you directly. But I do want to know this question, and it's leaving me now. I will come back to my brain. It was such a good question. Oh, okay. So how does working with you and embodying your principles actually make women in business more money and more profit? Why do we need to care about our health?
So think about a time when you had like endless energy, joy, you were having amazing sex. And hopefully you can land on a memory. Things just flow. They're easy. Your hormones conjugate in the best way. You're not inflamed. Like, so when we're prioritizing pleasure, the health stuff comes into play, and we're giving from excess, from overflow at that point. And yeah, the best way that I can correlate that is like, think of a time when you just felt on top of the world health-wise, or was having the best sex of your life. And that's like what we're recreating in a sustainable way when we work together.
Yeah. You're aligned. You're not afraid. You're not in fear, survival. And you put yourself out there. You're not attached to the outcome. You're like, it's just flowing through you. Yes. Okay. So I know people are going to be like, Dr. Jordin, I need more of her. So where can they find you?
The Pleasure Principles podcast is where you can hear a lot of my content, a lot more about these concepts, tips for how to start implementing in your day-to-day life. And you can always send me a DM on Instagram at Dr. Jordin Wiggins.
Awesome. And your book, where can they find that?
All platforms, The Pink Canary.
Perfect. Thank you for being you.
Thank you for having me, Heather.
So there you have it. Dr. Jordin Wiggins, Magical Unicorn. So right now, I want you to take a screenshot of this episode that you're listening to. I'm actually going to be giving away some business coaching support. We have a attracting profit sales accelerator coming out. And this is all about helping you thrive in your business and attract more qualified leads, increase your profit, whether it's time, money, or energy. And a lot of times people come in and they're struggling with, it might be sales, or they're struggling with marketing, or they're struggling with team management. We look at a holistic perspective of your business. So you can be gifted an opportunity to win if you take a screenshot of this episode, post it on social media, and tag me at Heather Chauvin, Chauvin. And we will be, everybody who retags, we take your name, we put you in a draw, and then we will be reaching out with the winners. And if you are one of those business owners and you are past the 6-figure mark, we have 6 and 7-figure business owners, and you are looking to attract more profit in your personal and professional life, time, money, and energy, then I encourage you to check out our next cohort for our Attracting Profit Sales Accelerator. So head on over to heatherchauvin.com/business and get on that wait list. If you are not on that wait list, we are not opening it to the public. So please get on the wait list. We only do this by application only. So not everybody is accepted. You do need to fill out an application. So head on over to heatherchauvin.com/business, get on that wait list, and then we will email you the application. And if you qualify or you want to chat with us, we will be in touch. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you really enjoyed the conversation with Dr. Jordin and I. And I just want you to know that attracting profit difficult when you are surrounded by the right support.